Hi, everyone. Welcome to the College to Calling Summit. My name is Miko Lau, and the reason why I gathered together over 20 plus experts to do this show is to help inspire, educate, and empower recent college graduates and people in their early 20s on how to rediscover themselves, find their calling, and to build a happy, successful life centered around what they love doing every single day. And today, I'm super honored to have a very special guest here with us. Her name is Ora Nadrich. Ora is the founder and president of the Institute for Transformational Thinking. She is also the author of Live True, a mindfulness guide to authenticity, and the groundbreaking book Says Who, How One Simple Question Can Change the Way You Think Forever. And she specializes in transformational thinking and self-discovery, and she also helps new coaches as they launch their career in helping other people change their lives. And Ora's work has been featured in Women's Health Magazine, Psychology Today, and NBC News, and so many more. So with that being said, I am really excited to dive into this interview today to talk about Ora's journey coming to all the amazing success that she has today, and just to really pick her brain a little bit. And Ora, I'm really excited for you to be here, and thank you so much for your time to share your insights and your wisdom with our audience today.
Hi, Miko. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. So this is something that I do with all my experts on this show. I love for you guys to take our audience back in time a little bit and just share with us who Ora was back in her early 20s. What were you doing back then, before these amazing success that you have in your life?
Actually, in my early 20s, I was an actress. I was an actress for 10 years, and I primarily did episodic television and commercials. And I was also a writer, and that's really what I did very early on. I mean, I was writing what I like to say is contemplative and existential poetry at 10 years old. So I was always writing. I loved to write, but I pursued acting. And while I was an actress, I sold one of my screenplays at 23 years old, which was pretty amazing. I was part of a writing program, and my script was bought. And so I really spent my 20s doing that, both writing and acting. That's primarily what I was doing at that time.
Mm-hmm. And that sounds like it was a really fun career. Was this something that you were passionate about back then, or was that some? Yeah.
I was passionate about it because acting, as I said, acting and writing was something that I declared that I wanted to do very early on. So that really was something that I was fulfilling. I knew that that is what I wanted to pursue. That's the career that I wanted to pursue. And I did. I went after what I wanted to do, and I did it. And I did it for 10 years. And then I stopped acting at 30 and primarily just focused on writing, which is what I do today.
Yeah, so that's a really big shift from acting and to doing the work that you do today, helping people transform their thinking. So how did that came about? What was the inspiration behind the change in career paths for you?
Well, I believe that the path that I embarked on really is the path, I write about the authentic self. My book, Live True, A Mindfulness Guide to Authenticity, really brings the reader into understanding what it means to live authentically to our true nature, the authentic self. It's not that I wasn't living authentically in the 10 years that I was acting. It's that I was pursuing a dream that I wanted to actualize, and I did in fact do it. But when I look back and think about who I was very early on and my work as a mindfulness teacher and practitioner, that I also was that person. I was somebody who was very inquisitive. I wanted to know the hows and whats. I asked a lot of questions as a young girl. And the practice of mindfulness is being present. It's the practice of being present. And as a child, I really felt that I was that as well. I used to love to lie in large fields of grass and look up into the sky and watch the clouds move across the sky and really register impermanence. And it's interesting, as a mindfulness meditation teacher now, that's one of the things that helps meditators stay focused, is to think of the thoughts in our mind like clouds moving across the sky. They come and go. So all that to say that I think the makings of a mindfulness teacher was there. I just didn't know it at the time. I didn't know that that would be what I would fulfill later on in my life. It really was also a family incident that happened when I was not quite 15 that really turned my world upside down. I had an older sister. I had two. Now I have one. And when I was just turning 15, she had a mental breakdown, and it was devastating. It was tragic. It was devastating. It was heartbreaking. And when that happened to her, I actually went into fight or flight. And when we go into fear, we tell ourselves things because we think our survival is threatened somehow. So the thought that came into my mind at the time was, I thought, well, if that could happen to her, that could happen to me. And that was just a thought that was born out of fear. So what happened is that I buried that thought into my subconscious. And what I say is that when we don't tend to thoughts that are troubling for us, they stay in our subconscious. And what can happen is that we can start to experience what I call, in my first book, Says Who, the side effects or the symptoms of a thought that's causing us, it could even be something that's causing us great despair. So what happened was, Miku, is that I'm very connected to the mind-body connection. I was experiencing anxiety. I didn't know why. And I continued working as an actress, but my anxiety was coming to the foreground. And it was actually impeding my career. So I knew that I wanted to get to the bottom of it. Long story short, it set me on a very long psychospiritual journey. And I started to study all sorts of therapies and psychological modalities, if you will. And ultimately, I found Jungian analysis, which was incredible because I learned so much about me, my unconscious, my psyche, my fears, what Carl Jung, psychoanalyst Carl Jung, calls the shadow, which are aspects of ourselves that we're not maybe looking at or aware of. So I felt very blessed that I was led to this to be able to really deal with my own issues. And it was life-changing for me and transformative. So that's when I knew, with the incident that happened with my sister plus my own evolution, that I wanted to really delve deep into the workings of the mind, and decided that I wanted to be a life coach and help others be able to experience the type of cognitive understanding or even the dissonance between our thoughts, and how our thoughts can really, connecting the dots of thoughts create emotions, create behavior, create actions, create reality. Our thoughts are so powerful. So I went through a very hard time on this journey to finally get to the healing of what was really troubling me. When I decided to be a life coach, I knew that I could really help people sort of not hurry the process, but not have to go through such a long period of despair that I had gone through. And that's why I decided to go into the wellness field, become a life coach, and then a mindfulness teacher.
Yeah, and it's so powerful to have people like yourself who have walked the journey, did the work, and now we have the honor and the privilege to really pick your minds to shortcut that curve, so that we can get started on that life that's really true to ourselves, instead of having to spend decades of trying to figure it out on our own. So Ora, you're someone who really believes in mindfulness when it comes to creating the life with happiness, fulfillment, and authenticity. So how does mindfulness really show up in your life, like a day-to-day experience? How does that show up, and how does it impact our lives?
Well, I want to talk about mindfulness in breaking it down into what is mindfulness, why practice mindfulness, and how to practice mindfulness. Mindfulness is basically a very ancient practice. Its origins are 2,500 years old in Buddhist meditation, do you know? And really to understand what it means to remember, to be present so that we can remember who we really are. We live very busy lives. We're very distracted. We're on social media. And when I think of mindfulness, let's say related to someone like the Buddha, who became an enlightened being and chose the path of awareness and awakening and set himself as a royal prince, he saw suffering in the world, and that so moved him deeply that he committed his life to the path of awakening. And as we know it, the story of Buddha is that he became an enlightened being. The name Buddha, the awakened one. So we take basically a ancient practice, if you will, and we bring it into the modern day. There's so many great, valuable practices that are so filled with wisdom, and they're available to us, and no, you don't have to be a Buddhist to practice it, and you don't have to meditate to practice it. So you take these age-old practices that are incredibly beneficial to the wellness of our being, and we have this great opportunity to implement them into our lives. And not to say that these practices are so difficult, because they're not. Where the difficulty lies in our commitment to implementing these disciplines and these practices so that we can see changes in our life. So we now know that what is mindfulness? It is the practice of being present. Why practice mindfulness? Well, as I just said, we live so busy. We're constantly busy. We're on our devices more than ever before. A research out of Harvard said that the mind wanders close to 50% of the time. And we think between approximately 40 and 70,000 thoughts a day. So we need help. We need help to know how to pause, how to quiet the mind. In the interim, we cannot stay in the state of what is called the doing. We must find time, because to me, it's like replenishing the well. We have to fill ourselves up and support our well-being, or what happens is you get anxiety. Depression is at its all-time high today. The opioids crisis is catastrophic. And what that tells us is that we need the help, and help is there for us. We can get so swept up in so many things and not really nurture and feed our soul, our hearts, so we must really pay attention to how important this is, because it's only going to escalate. Technology is going to just get more and more expansive and increase. And, we have things today like artificial intelligence. I think it's great that we're so brilliant and we're creating all of this incredible technology, but we must balance. We must strike a balance between the creative beings that we are, and also know when to really calm our minds down, experience quietude and not be threatened by the quiet mind, and also to really strike a life in balance. It's very important.
Yeah. And I'm speaking from my personal experience, and even just talking to my friends who just came out of college. And I feel like a lot of the confusion and that lack of direction really stems from the idea that growing up, we always have someone tell us what to do. Here's the next goal to achieve in order to get that success. And then the moment we graduate from college, we have all kind of possibilities in front of us. We get to make those decisions. But a lot of us just don't know where to go from there. And that really stems from, it requires self-discovery. And a lot of that requires being mindful, having that calm state of mind in order to tap into those answers. So I think we need it more than ever. But here's the question I have for you. A lot of my friends, including myself, when I first came out of college, our only focus was to find a job that is in alignment to our degrees, what we study, have to pay off student loans, pay off student debt. So how do we balance between that priority, that urgency of finding a job, with also taking a time to just be mindful and get to know ourselves? How do we navigate?
That's a very good question, because there are choices that we make that are out of necessity, and I understand that. And then there are choices that we may not have the luxury at that time when we're having to pay off student loans, having to pay the rent. I mean, getting a job is the first thing that a college graduate thinks of. Okay, now what? There's the big now what, and you've spent all these years in college, your entire education, and now you're out in the world. What do you want to do? And not everybody can right out of the gates find a job or find a career that's exactly what they want, or is on a pay scale that can help you cover all your expenses. So I think that where mindfulness comes into play here is that mindfulness is having an awareness. It's having an awareness of what your needs are. It's having an awareness of what is reasonable, having an awareness of what's practical, having an awareness of what's realistic, so that you can make a game plan for yourself, not out of fear, not out of, FOMO, that you're so concerned that, am I making the right decision? Am I making the wrong decision? If I don't do this, will this happen? Will that happen if I don't do this? This is the thinking mind. This is where we can spin out, and we can be at the effect of our thoughts that I say in my first book, Says Who, your thoughts need to work for you. They need to be your cheering squad, not your hecklers. So they really need to serve your well-being. So where mindfulness really helps you is to become methodical in a calm way, also not a reactive way. A lot of the times when we go into fear, and I shared my story of when I was in a fear state, which was really the genesis of my understanding of how the mind works, that make a game plan for yourself. And you can make a game plan and you can decide how long that game plan is for you. Maybe the first year out of college, this is my game plan. But whatever the decisions are that you make, know that there are going to be bumps in the road. There's going to be stress. There's going to be things that you want to pay attention to. And I really stress this because what's very important is that you always connect to what you're feeling. So that, let's just say you get a job and you experience stress, you need to balance that, which means on the weekends, you do really important self-care. That could be meditation, that could be yoga, that could be mindful walking, that could be, hiking, that could be doing things, eating mindfully. Mindfulness is a skill that gets plugged into everything. It gets plugged into how we're doing everything in our life. Are we mindfully eating? Are we mindfully taking care of ourselves? Are we mindfully interacting with others? It gives us a real strong awareness of what's healthy for us, and especially your demographic. It's very important because anxiety, depression, these are real emotions that are, very much a part of the young generation today. There's a lot of pressure, whether it's external pressure or it's self-imposed pressure. You really need to strike the balance as I talk about. So mindfulness can help you do that.
Yeah. And I agree with that so much. My journey also started when I discovered how powerful it is to have that being in the present moment, calming my mind and being mindful. But I want you to go more in depth into how our thoughts work. How does that shape our reality and our behaviors? Because I feel like that's something that not so many people are aware of. But the moment they understand that, literally everything changes for us. So how exactly do our thoughts affect our physical reality?
They affect us greatly. Okay. And let me just say this. When I say we think between 40 and 70,000 thoughts, we're not cognizant of all the thoughts that we're thinking. That's impossible. But think of the thoughts that get our attention. Most often than not, the thoughts that get our attention are negative thoughts and fear-based thoughts. Those are the ones that are speaking the loudest in our mind. And those are the ones that usually get our full attention. And yes, we can have very positive thoughts and we can have thoughts that make us feel really good, but then we're in a state of feeling good. And so we're not really focusing on that because now it's emotional. A thought that we have that's positive and exhilarating, we now are feeling that the feeling. But when a thought is negative or fear-based, it tends to loop. And we start to continue to think of that thought over and over again. You know, it's energy. Thoughts are energy. And, you know, that saying, energy goes where energy flows, do you know? So let's just say you have a negative thought. What happens is, if you don't have a mindful awareness of that thought, you're going to be at the effect of that thought. And that thought is now going to create a reaction in you. And you can really spin out about that thought. So the way to really implement mindfulness with that is that to start to really practice the art of awareness of your thoughts. This is truly an art. This is truly a discipline of the mind. So what you want to do is, if you can start it, and by the way, this is a gradual learning and it's a gradual practice. And like anything else, you want to get into shape, you exercise. You have to learn how to trust the discipline. And that if you're really committed to the understanding of mastering your mind, if you will, then you're going to start to implement this practice and see the results that you're getting. So what I really recommend is to start it as early as you can. Start it first thing in the morning. You know, you wake up in the morning and what do you usually do? You jump out of bed, or I will say this about your generation. Most often your devices are literally in bed with you. You're intimate with your devices, do you know? And the first thing that you do is you check your phone, right? So if you can really discipline yourself to not do that, because it's habitual and studies have shown that it's addicting. So we know that. If you can wake up in the morning and just from the minute you open your eyes, take a couple of minutes just to be present. And a great way to do that, Miko, is to maybe focus on your breath. You know, your breath is a great gift and it will always ground you. And in meditation, when the mind starts to wander and our thoughts start to spin out, that's why breathing or focusing on the breath will always bring your focus and awareness back to the present moment. So first thing you wake up in the morning, you know, stop yourself from jumping out of bed, stop yourself from, going to checking your phone, and literally take a couple of minutes to connect to breath. And you can put your hands on your chest. You can feel the rising and the falling of the breath. And it's so grounding. That can take you a minute. There's a great breathing exercise that I love to do. It's counting to 4. It's inhalation, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Exhalation, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2. Inhalation, 1, 2, 3, 4, 3. Exhalation, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4. That took less than a minute. It's calming. It's grounding. So that becomes your jump start. That becomes your center point. And if you can do that, you're really setting the tone for your day. And what happens is you're already putting yourself in the motion and you're putting yourself in the openness, if you will, of awareness. Suddenly you're aware. So what you want to do now is be aware of the thoughts that are coming up in your mind. The first negative thought that comes up, oh my God, I'm not going to get that paper done in time. I'm going to fail my class. Oh, I'm not going to get hired on the dream job. I'm not qualified enough. I'm not good enough. You know, this negative self-talk is real. We all have the inner critic to varying degrees. Be aware of the first negative thought that comes up and try and be an observer. Try and be the witness. Do you know? It's as if you are standing over here and you're witnessing the thoughts that are in your head. And the very first negative thought that comes up into the foreground of your psyche, be aware of it. Is this thought useful for me? You know, that's part of the 7 questions of the Says Who method. These are very straightforward 7 questions to ask yourself. One of them being, do I like this thought? We think so many thoughts that we don't even like. Another one of the Says Who questions is, does this thought work for me? How is this thought beneficial for me? How is this thought going to help me when I go out today to look for a job? How is this thought going to help me when I'm sitting in front of somebody who is in the position to hire me and my inner self-talk is telling me that I'm not good enough? You know, and one of the techniques that I have in Says Who that is incredibly helpful, it's called the release and replace technique.
Mm-hmm.
When a negative thought comes up, note it, meaning be aware of it, and change that thought out for its positive counterpart. So let's just say the first thought before you're going to go out and meet somebody that could potentially hire you, I'm probably not going to get this job. Change that with, I'm going to ace this. I deserve to get this job. I am qualified to get this job. I'm the best person for this job. And when we start to train the mind to advocate for us, our subconscious takes orders from what we say because it turns into our core beliefs. So we want to be very aware of what we're telling ourselves. And the only way ultimately for us to really reach our goals and to manifest our reality is that we need thoughts that support the vision that we have. We need our thoughts to support the goal, or we're not going to reach it. So the release and replace technique is an incredibly helpful mindfulness technique that I've created.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that so much. And even just listening to you talk about the two different thoughts, the negative and the positive, I can feel the energy difference between those two thoughts. And that really shifts the way that we present ourselves to others energetically. Yes. So
I'm really
powerful.
glad, you know, Miko, I'm really glad you said that, because when I work with a lot of people, I say, if you say a negative thought to yourself, how does it feel in the body? It doesn't feel good. There's really, what a negative thought will do is it'll just perpetuate more negativity, and will also cause a reaction. So suddenly you can feel anxious and you can feel fearful. But if you say a positive thought, you feel a difference energetically. And this is a practice that is proven, it's evidence-based, that it really is about the mind-body connection. I also will say that from a neuroscientific point of view, you really are changing the neurotransmitters of your brain. Do you know, when you start to tell yourself positive thoughts, you're really firing up those neurons, and we're creating new neural pathways. So we don't default with this building of new neural pathways, we begin to default to more positive ways of thinking. These become positive, healthy habits of thinking that start to take precedent over old negative habits of thinking. We're basically training our mind. You know, it's like a whole new mind. You're training, you have the ability, it's quite brilliant. You have the ability to train your mind to be this extraordinary working vessel, if you will, to help you navigate the, you know, the journey of life in the best way possible.
Yeah. So, Ora, this is one thing that I personally struggle with when I first became super aware and conscious of the thoughts that were going through in my mind. So, as someone who is somewhat of a perfectionist and high achieving, when I noticed those negative thoughts coming up, I would be tough on myself and be like, stop it, and try my best to think positively. But the more I try, the more it seems to I seem to go down that negative spiral. So how do we balance between being aware, but at the same time not be judgmental of ourselves and being hard on ourselves for having those negative habitual thoughts?
Well, think of yourself as your guide. You're like your guide, do you know? And how are you going to guide yourself? Imagine that you're climbing a mountain. Do you know? Visualize yourself climbing a mountain. You want to climb, you know, Mount Kilimanjaro or the Himalayas, you know, or you want to help guide someone else. What advice would you give them? How would you help them? How would you help them to take the next step? So with an awareness of the negative inner chatter of our mind, if you ask yourself those questions, you know, this thought really is of no use to me. It's not very useful. I'm aware that I'm having it. I'm not going to beat myself up for having it. I'm aware that it's a bit of an obstruction. It's, you know, there's a great expression, a Buddhist expression called monkey mind. that if you think of a monkey jumps from tree to tree, from branch to branch, and it really does define the restless mind and the way in which our thoughts try and trip us up. Do you know? So if you're on to the activity, to the restless activity of your own thinking mind, you can tame it better. So when you ask me, what exactly can you do? The very first thing to do is to have an awareness that that is an activity that's going on in the mind. And even if, let's say, I was at my desk and I was working and suddenly these negative thoughts started to come into my mind, I have an awareness of it. I acknowledge that I'm having it, and I am aware that that thought is not useful for me. It's not useful for me to get my work done. So something like, again, like the release and replace method, I can replace that thought. And it starts to become habitual. You start to literally see the way in which, you know, when I talk about the analogy of the clouds moving across the sky, same is our thoughts. They come and go. They're not permanent. And I say, you know, our thoughts don't hold on to us. We hold on to our thoughts. We get attached. And then we give our own thinking mind power over us, when in fact, we are, as I say in Says Who, we are the creator and master of our internal dialogue, which creates our reality. So knowing that is pretty powerful. You know, we're quite powerful. What do you want your thoughts to be? So first and foremost, Miko, have an awareness of the activity of the mind. Have an awareness that it is, in fact, an activity. The mind has its restless behavior, and be aware of it and work with it. You know, and yes, even if you're a high achiever, even if you're hard on yourself, even if you feel, well, I can do better than this, you know, this isn't good enough, you know, as high achievers tend to do, we can be perfectionistic, do you know, and constantly diminish our efforts by believing that we can do better. There's nothing wrong with that, because sometimes that encourages us to bump it up a notch, or really go for, you know, reaching and aspiring for even a higher goal. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being a high achiever. There's nothing wrong with wanting the best for yourself. Just be cognizant of the thoughts that you tell yourself along the way. Do you remember, it's that great saying, it's not the destination, it's the journey. So it's not where you want to get to. You have to be very present and very conscious on the path of where it is you want to get. Because, you know, where you want to get to, because so many people who haven't really worked with themselves in a healthy way get to reach their goals, and they find themselves very unhappy and unsatisfied, you know?
Yeah, that definitely resonates with me. But I love what you mentioned earlier about how really observing our thoughts from like an outsider perspective, that helps a lot for me personally. And just knowing that I'm not defined by my thoughts and my emotions, knowing that really helped me. So let's shift gear a little bit. I want to talk about why it's so important for us to live in true authenticity of who we are. Why is that important, as opposed to just really living up to others' expectations and doing what others have defined as success in our life? Why is that important?
Well, I think we have to ask ourselves, why would we live our lives based on what others expect of us? Or why would we live our life really fulfilling someone's idea or ideal of who or what we should be? Do you know, we define ourselves, do you know? And when I talk about manifesting your reality, you are the arbiter. You are the one that is it's your movie. What do you want that to be? So the difficulty with living a life which is basically inauthentic is that you are fulfilling something for others, and that's going to deplete you. It's going to deplete the part of you that knows you're living dishonestly. Do you know, I say it's a lot harder to be who we're not than to be who we are, because we have to keep up a role. We have to keep up a persona. And oftentimes it's a false persona. And the reason for that a lot of the times is that we think we have to be something so that someone will accept us. And we think we have to be something or behave a certain way, look a certain way, act a certain way, so we'll be accepted, we'll be loved. Or, especially with all of the influence of social media today, we're comparing ourselves to others. So suddenly we lose sight of, well, wait, I'm a unique individual and there's nobody like me. So why am I so quick to throw myself under the bus and not present who I am out in the world and be proud of who I am, and instead, swap myself to be something that I'm not? These are really important questions. It really can create despair and depression if you're not careful, because if you're constantly trying to be something that you're not, it will catch up with you. There's no doubt that it will catch up with you eventually. And that's why you want to really nip this in the bud so it doesn't perpetuate and carry into adulthood where you feel that something's not quite right. There's something off and you know it and you don't know exactly what it is. And you wake up one day and you're so depleted because you haven't really been filling the authentic self, who you really are. Each and every one of us comes into the world as a unique being. There's only one Miko, there's only one Ora. And that's the beauty of watching children, because they are so in present moment awareness. They are so present that they're just being who they are. They're not knowing how to be anybody other than who they are. And it's once when we embark on the life journey and we start to, go into success, competition, comparisons, expectations, those that we place on ourselves, those that society places on us. And before you know it, you wake up one day and you feel something is really wrong. And that is something you want to pay attention to, because it creates that dissonance, and it also creates dis-ease, meaning you're no longer at ease within your body. And I believe in the mind-body connection. And what happens is that you can start to feel symptoms and emotions like depression and anxiety.
Right. And that's why I'm really passionate about serving this specific audience, because I have a lot of friends in their 30s and 40s, and they get to the point when they realize they spend the past decades doing something that is not true to themselves and not happy. So if they could get this information today and really have that aha moment, they can really jumpstart their best life starting today after this interview. So let's talk about, I feel like when we go into something like follow our calling, follow our passion, it's very abstract up here in this future that might happen. And it can be really scary when we don't see a tangible physical outcome that we can really see happening as we move towards that direction. So how can we keep going without letting the fears hold us back?
Well, if you talk about the fears, I say that mindfulness, again, is the practice of being present. So that means that we're in the present. And the present is the most real time there is, because we're most alive in it. You and I are in the present together, and we're having this conversation, and it's real. So we're not in the past, which is come and gone, and we're not yet in the future, which isn't here yet. And, I talk about that in my book, Live True. I say, oftentimes we are in two time frames that don't really exist. Again, the past, which is come and gone, and the future isn't here. And we have the hardest time being present, because we're usually worrying about what's going to happen next, which means that this moment right now isn't enough. Now, I know that we plan for the future and we worry about the future, but, be aware of, again, how out of the moment you are. You're already taking yourself out of the present time and worrying about what might or could happen. This is like a possibility, it's something that we can, fret over. Hasn't even happened yet. So the most important thing really is to wake up each day trying to, as I said, connect to your most authentic self. Who am I today? Who am I going to present myself as out in the world? That when you bring the best of who you are out into the world, or into your friendships, your relationships, going out for that job interview, this is what people are going to see. And this is the light in you that people are going to really pick up on. So you have to trust the process. And when you go into worry and when you go into, is my future going to happen the way I want it to, be aware of the fact that you're not dropping into the present and you're already in a state of worry or anxiety about the future. Do you know? That's what I want people to be cognizant of, how they take themselves out of the moment. So I hope that answered your question.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So, Ora, you have shared so many amazing insights and wisdom so far, but I could talk to you all day, just so you know. But to respect your time, I have a last couple of questions to wrap up this interview. Sure. So, what is your definition of success today?
Success as a definition of success, or success for me, or just how I view success for
you?
Success for me means, am I living true to who I really am? Am I fulfilling my intention, my purpose? Am I waking up each day aligned with my true self, the authentic self? And am I really going out in my day presenting the light and the love that I want to share out in the world? I feel that gives me a sense of what my purpose is here. And when we really feel like we are in service, when we feel that we can, not just take from the earth, not just be me-centric and always think that we're trying to just, what more can I get for me? What do we want to put out there that's positive, that's helping to heighten awareness and raise consciousness, which we need, by the way, now more than ever. We really need to raise consciousness on the planet. There's a lot going on right now. So my idea of success is, I love the Gandhi quote, be the change you wish to see in the world. So what can I do? How can I be successful in being part of the change, part of the collective consciousness on this planet that is helping to raise the consciousness to make this world a better place? That's my idea of success.
Yeah, I love that so much. So last question, Ora, knowing everything that you know now, if you can go back in time and talk to your 20-year-old version of yourself, or just think of everyone listening right now, what would be the number one thing you would say to us or yourself back when you were in your 20s?
Don't worry so much. Trust the process of growing and evolving. Try and be connected and live true. It's the name of my book. Live true, live you. Trust yourself, love yourself, and go for your dreams. Really believe in yourself. That's what I would say to me. I would really have said, worry less. Don't be so anxious about the future. Now that I'm a mindfulness teacher, I really understand that living out of the moment, we're really robbing ourselves of dropping into the moment with love and acceptance. So that's the advice that I would give myself today.
Wow, that was powerful. And I just want to take this moment to acknowledge you, Ora, for your generosity and the amazing work that you're doing out there. And I can see that you're someone who really knows your gifts and your purpose and your calling, and you really embody that and you live true to that. You are a walking, what you teach, you preach what you teach. What was that called?
I'm walking my talk. What I love.
Yes.
Thank you, Nico, for your beautiful compliment. I like to say, I did a little spin on walk your talk. It's like walk your thoughts, because it starts here. Remember, it starts here. Yeah. So, we can't walk around reading each other's minds. Only we know what we hold in our thinking mind. And I say, pick and choose your thoughts very carefully. Curate your thoughts, like the way you walk into an art museum. It's well curated. We see the best of the art of that artist. Curate your thoughts. So, pick and choose your thoughts carefully so that you can embody, and you talk about embodying, that you can live out in the world representing who you are in the best way possible, and that's your thoughts. So you said I walk my talk. I'd like to say I walk my thoughts.
Oh, I love that. Walk your thoughts. So, Ora, how can our listeners find you online and stay connected with you after listening to this interview so they can continue to get inspirations from you?
They can reach out to me on my website. It's oranadrich.com, and my website, and all the things that I'm doing, and my articles on mindfulness and the workshops that I'm doing. And I love to hear from people. I want to know what their journey's about. You know, we're on this journey together. Nobody's alone. That's another really important thing to recognize, is that you're not alone on your journey, that we're walking this together. We're finding our way back home again. I love that. The Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh says, walking ourselves back home again. And I interpret that as walking ourselves back to our authentic self. So I love to hear from people. I love to know what their journey's about. I'm rooting you on. I'm championing your listeners to say, go live your best life. You can do it. Yeah. One thought at a time, and make it positive, and make those thoughts work for you.
One thought at a time. Super powerful. Thank you, Ora. And also, make sure you go back to the same email that this interview is sent out, because there's a special free gift that Ora will be offering to you guys. So make sure you get your hands on that. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. Hopefully you got some powerful, powerful wisdoms and insights from Ora today. And make sure you tune back into our next interview. See you next time.